All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. So, here at this NBA's All Star break, one question for me is there a clear cut favorite to come out of the Eastern Conference? We've got the Detroit Pistons at 40 and 13. They are the top team in the East. Second best record, or pardon me, the best record percentage wise in the NBA. I know OKC has more wins than them out west, but nonetheless, you've got the Boston Celtics who are 35 and 19. They're 5.5 behind the Pistons. And then you've got the Knicks who are 35 and 20, a half game behind the Celtics, and they're 6 games behind Detroit. We've got Cleveland in fourth with a record of 34 and 21. They're 7 games back. Toronto is 32 and 23. They're in fifth place. They're 9 games back. And then you've got the Philadelphia 76ers who are 30 and 24. And of course, Philly is 10 and a half back of Detroit. Um, I want to start with the Pistons because just 2 years ago, this team lost 68 games. And of course, it wasn't just what they did 2 years ago. You think about it, they had a stretch, okay, from 2020. They lost 46 games that year, and that was a COVID shortened season. They went 23 and 59 the following year, 17 and 65, 14 and 68 in 2024. And then, of course, the huge turnaround last year under head coach JB Bickerstaff as they saw a 30-game improvement in order to get to the postseason. And now we're looking at a Pistons team that, after losing 68 games 2 years ago, they now have the potential to win 60 games for the first time since 2016. And again, that's a credit first and foremost to their head coach and JB Bickerstaff. Make no mistake about it, Cade Cunningham is a bona fide star. The emergence of Jalen Duren, who just made the All Star game for the first time in his career. One thing about this Pistons team, you know that they are going to bring the intensity. You know that they are going to bring it on the defensive end, and you're going to have to work to get past this club in the postseason. I think they are going to be a very interesting team in the playoffs, and I also think that they are going to be a very tough out for whomever that they play. You look at the Celtics, and so many people, okay, were ready to shovel dirt on Boston following, what started uh, in the playoffs last year. Of course, when they lost to the Knicks in the second round, we saw Jayson Tatum go down with that Achilles injury. People were ready to write them off. Then, of course, we know that Boston had to part with Kristaps Porzingis as well as Drew Holiday to avoid that additional tax apron. I was one of those who said, you know what? The Celtics are still going to be a solid team in the Eastern Conference. A, they have a strong organization. B, they have a solid system. And three, they still have a lot of talent on this team. And I think all of that has been on display for this NBA season so far. You look at the emergence of Jalen Brown, and I'm saying that not to say we all know that Jalen Brown is a star, but he has really taken his game to the next level in the absence of one Jayson Tatum. The emergence of guys like Derek White and Peyton Pritchard have really helped this Boston team. And all signs point to them getting Jayson Tatum back at some point here in the second half of the season. The question is going to be, how is Boston going to work him into their rotation? Should the Celtics have Tatum coming off of the bench? Well, I'll tell you like this. I would imagine, regardless of what's at stake in the postseason for Boston, I would imagine first and foremost, they are going to approach Jason Tatum's return with the kid gloves because they got too much invested in him. At the same time, if it were up to me, okay, and clearly I'm not in the NBA, But if it were up to me, I would have Jayson Tatum coming off the bench because he would just solidify that second unit. I don't see Jayson Tatum or the Boston Celtics wanting that to happen. So you just got to wonder how the chemistry is going to be for that club upon his return. You look at the New York Knicks, and of course, so much was expected from the Knicks coming into this season after they got to the Eastern Conference Finals last year for the first time in 25 years. Of course, surprisingly, they fired head coach Tom Thibodeau and replaced him with Mike Brown. And of course, so many expectations on the Knicks coming into the season. A lot of people felt, well, hey, the Knicks are going to win the Eastern Conference going away. The Knicks are going to win 60 games in the regular season. Well, I'll tell you like this, the Knicks still have a chance to win the East. Yes, they're not going to win 60 games. They've still been a very solid team over the first half of the season. It's one of those where clearly you've got a new head coach in Mike Brown. He's got to understand his players. His players have to understand him. Mike Brown, unlike Tom Thibodeau, has been using his bench more. To me, I feel like the Knicks are not as strong defensively as they were under Tom Thibodeau, but this is still a very good team to be reckoned with. Make no mistake about it. And they're a very deep squad as well. But with all of that said, the Knicks are still only going to go as far as Jalen Brunson takes them. And of course, he's their leader, he's their finisher, he's their inspiration. Any other adjective that you can use to describe Jalen Brunson, everything goes through him. Not just Jalen Brunson, but for me, Karl-Anthony Towns, because you look at Karl-Anthony Towns, and I've talked about this throughout his NBA career, as talented as he is, sometimes in the postseason, he always does not come up big. Is that going to be the case once again? Because, yeah, things are going through Jalen Brunson, but the Knicks are going to need Cat to be on top of his game if they're going to go where they want to go. Of course, we know that the Knicks are stacked on the wings with the likes of OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, and Josh Hart. And then, of course, we saw this team just pick up Jeremy Sohan. And for me, a move that a lot of people aren't talking about is Jose Alvarado. He's a New York kid. He has that old school New York Knicks grit. And I think that is going to pay dividends for this team coming down the stretch. I also think it's going to pay dividends for the Knicks in the postseason. One thing and one big question for me about the Knicks is, you got Mitchell Robinson at the five. Of course, we know he's a free throw liability, he's an offensive liability. You don't really need Mitchell Robinson to score per se, but those situations on the free throw line could be a factor for the Knicks. My other thing with Mitchell Robinson is I feel like the Knicks have never really answered the question of their center rotation after they lost Isaiah Hartenstein in free agency to the Oklahoma City Thunder. I feel like Mitchell Robinson is good. He's better when he is part of a center combo. And of course, Mitchell Robinson has had injury issues throughout his NBA career. Keeping him on the floor is going to be a must for the New York Knicks if they are going to be able to go where they want to go. You look at the Cavs and there's currently in fourth place. And of course, we saw this team finish with the best record in the East last year. They won 60 plus games. Of course, it was the first year for Kenny Atkinson as the coach there. Everything just came together with Donovan Mitchell. Of course, there are questions about that team behind the scenes as far as guys getting along, this, that, and the third. But nonetheless, we've seen Cleveland make some moves so far this season. Of course, Darius Garland is no longer there. Now enter James Harden. And of course, the biggest thing for me with this trade, and I've questioned it and I'll continue to question it, are there enough basketballs in Cleveland? Because, and the reason why I say that, Donovan Mitchell, ball dominant guy. Same thing could be said about James Harden. Where does everybody else factor into this thing? We know that Donovan Mitchell is going to be Cleveland's guy in those go-to situations. Unfortunately for James Harden, he always pulls that disappearing act in the postseason. It's not a question of when or whether or not it's going to happen. It's more like when. Okay, so that to me, I think is going to be something that is going to be a hindrance to the Cavs. You look at Toronto, and of course, they haven't made the playoffs in 4 years. That is clearly going to change this time around. This team has really come together this season, led by their quartet with R.J. Barrett, Brandon Ingram, Scotty Barnes, and Emmanuel Quickly. For me, the biggest question is going to be, or I have several big questions for Toronto. Who's going to be their go-to guy in those must situations? And of course, can Brandon Ingram stay healthy? As he is on pace to play in at least 70 games this season for the first time since his rookie season. You look at the Philadelphia 76ers, and I continue to say that the Sixers are the biggest what if in the NBA. Philadelphia has the talent to win an NBA championship. It's just a matter of keeping everybody healthy. And of course, it starts with Joel Embiid. And of course, we know the Sixers plan for Embiid. He's not going to be playing back to back games. They're trying to keep him fresh. He's played in 31 games so far for the Sixers of the 54. Let's see if they can get 50 to 55 games out of him in the regular season, and let's see what they can get from him in the playoffs. And of course, a healthy Embiid, there's nobody in Eastern Conference who is going to stop him. And again, like I said, the biggest what if in the NBA are the Sixers. With all of the injuries over the last couple of years to Joel Embiid, of course, we've seen the emergence of Tyrese Maxey for Philadelphia. And of course, Maxey is the truth. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He has a tag team partner now in the backcourt, courtesy of rookie VJ Edgecombe, who's putting together a solid rookie campaign. And like I said, I like that combo going forward of Edgecombe and Tyrese Maxey. APAP 1586, what's going on? Happy Monday to you. You're saying, let's go Knicks. Embiid, he hates playing against Mitchell Robinson. Well, I'll tell you like this. Mitchell Robinson can be physical with Embiid. And it's one of those where, as big and dominant as Embiid can be, the physicality can frustrate him. My thing with Mitchell Robinson is this. You got to keep him on the floor and you got to keep him out of foul trouble. That's always the biggest thing, because if Mitchell Robinson, has a couple of fouls early, he's not helping anybody. That's going to be the big thing right there, in my opinion. Also, with the Sixers, they're going to get Paul George back at some point. And I was one of those, yeah, Paul George has got suspended for 25 games. Yeah, he's not getting paid for those games. But my thing is this. I think that the Paul George suspension can actually be a blessing in disguise for Philadelphia. And the reason is Paul George is a veteran player. Paul George is an injury prone player. So now you've got 25 games without Paul George. He should come back fresh for the stretch run. And also, on top of that, let's see what he can do in the postseason. To your point, you're not worried about Boy George. Well, for me, my biggest thing with Paul George, and I said this from him going to Philly, is he needs to chill with podcast P. He needs to worry more about his what he calls himself being playoff P. And it's one of those where Philadelphia is a city, unlike in Indiana, unlike in Oklahoma City, unlike LA with the Clippers at least, where if you don't deliver in the playoffs, they're gonna let you hear about it. You're saying Philly would trade Paul George tomorrow if they could. Honestly, I questioned the signing from the jump, but and I said this going into the season. I said that Philadelphia should going forward, just try to build around Tyrese Maxey. I like Tyrese Maxey and Edgecombe. Let's just see if they can get enough out of Joel Embiid coming down the stretch in the postseason. And again, that's why I say Philly is the biggest what if right now in the NBA in either conference. Then they still got Kelly Oubre. Okay, we're talking about the Sixers right there. So they have depth on the wings. And I feel like Kelly Oubre to me is a guy who some people might say he's a little underrated. I don't think so. It's just a fact that, he's always been the guy behind the guy, so to speak. throughout the bulk of his NBA career. Then, you look at some of those teams that are currently in the play-in in the East. You've got Orlando. They're 28 and 25. I think Orlando should be better than what they are, but at the end of the day, you are what you are. Orlando's got to try to find a way to keep Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner healthy. And then, of course, you've got the Desmond Bain factor in there as well for the Magic. Miami, unfortunately, Miami's going to continue to be on walking that fine line of the razor's edge, if you will, between being a play-in and being a top six team. You've got Bam Adebayo, you've got Norman Powell, who's continued to build off of his strong season last year with the Clippers. You got Andrew Wiggins as well. But what are the Heat going to get out of Tyler Herro this season? That's going to be another question mark right there. You've got Charlotte, who has been playing some of the best basketball of the NBA towards the end of the first half of the season. Constantinople, I think, is going to be the real deal for this team. You look at that trio with him, LaMelo Ball, and Brandon Miller this season. They have been solid for the Hornets. And then you've got the Atlanta Hawks, and I think Jalen Johnson has gotten better each and every year in his young NBA career, and I think that is only going to continue right now. And my other question for the Hawks, because we saw the fire sale from the Chicago Bulls just prior to the trade deadline. The only team of those five on the outside looking in that I feel currently, has a shot to maybe make a run at the play-in at least is going to be Milwaukee. But I feel like all of that is going to come down to whether or not Giannis is healthy, and also whether or not Giannis is all in with the Bucks, because it's been too much of, what, I want to be here, I don't want to be here, from Giannis. And like I said before, the Bucks have done everything to try to keep Giannis happy. And it's not like Giannis has not won in Milwaukee. Of course, they got two roster spots right now for two of his brothers. They brought in different all-star players, you name it, this, that, and the third, to try to keep Giannis happy. He hasn't been healthy this season, so we really don't know what this Bucks team can be if everybody's on the same page and if everybody is healthy. That's what I would like to see out of them over the second half of the season. APAP, you're saying all you heard was how good that Orlando was going to be. Again, like I said, man, they've got the talent, but having the talent and doing something with it are two different things. And it's one of those that can't keep guys healthy. And again, in the NBA, you got to show up every single night and bring your A game. You're talking about facing the best in the world out there. And I think that is something that this young Orlando team is going to have to do, because you look at it right now, they're in seventh. They're a game and a half out of behind Philly for that sixth spot to avoid the play-in. They're going to have to bring it. I know that Philly, they're down Paul George right now. Also, Joel Embiid being in and out of the lineup. But you got Tyrese Maxey, and I think that should be enough to allow Philly to hold off Orlando and others in order to stay in that top six in the East. So I'm looking at it right now. Detroit, they're just a gritty team. And the Pistons, for the most part, they continue to take care of their business, and their grit is going to be big for them in the postseason. I want to see how Jayson Tatum factors back into things for the Celtics and how they, plan to use him. That's going to be interesting for me. The Knicks, I look at the Knicks, and like I said before, they're much deeper than what they have been in recent years. We all expected, Mike Brown to use this bench more than Tom Thibodeau did during his tenure with the Knicks, and he has been using that bench. My questions are going to be, Mike Brown in the postseason with his X's and O's. Do you consistently trust him? That's going to be one thing for me. You know what Jalen Brunson is going to give the Knicks, and he'll put this team on his back if he has to. Really shouldn't, because of the talent that's there. I like what the Knicks have on the wings. What are they going to get out of Cat? That's going to be another question for me in those key situations. You're saying you just want to see Detroit crash out like the '94 Sonics. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think with this Pistons team, and it's hard to believe, the Pistons have not won a playoff series, since the conference semis back in 2009. I think this Pistons team, they're definitely going to win at least a series, possibly two. Um, they're going to be a tough out, and I think the way they play D, and again, like I said, I like this kid Cade Cunningham. For me, I'm looking at it. I want to see what the Celtics look like when they get Tatum back. I also want to see what the Sixers can do if everybody, you know, can stay in the lineup. I think right now what it's going to come down to in the East, everybody's anticipating Knicks Celtics possibly in the second round, and of course, there's no love lost between both of those teams. Of course, and this goes back generations. We saw, and then a couple of years ago, we saw the Knicks go out there, and basically utilize their entire offseason to find a team capable of getting them past the Celtics. And of course, that was the case last year in the second round of the playoffs. There's a possibility that we could see both of these teams meet up once again. That would help a team like the Pistons, and the reason why I say that, if the standings stay the way that they are, you're going to have the Knicks and Celtics. One of them are going to knock off the other, and then they're not going to. If the Pistons were to make the Eastern Conference Finals, they wouldn't have to deal. Clearly, they wouldn't have to face both Boston and New York to do it. APAP, you're saying this is probably the best team that Mike Brown has ever coached. Listen, like I said before, this is a very deep team, especially for the Knicks, especially on the wings. And like I said, I think that Jose Alvarado signing, enough people are not talking about it. I think for the Knicks coming down the stretch, as well as into the postseason, I think that's going to be a big time factor for them because Alvarado, he's a New York guy first and foremost, and he plays with a chip on his shoulder. He always did when he was in New Orleans. He did the same thing collegiately as well at Georgia Tech. You're saying I only see 6 games of the playoff experience. Who's the second star on the team you trust in the playoffs? Are you asking about the Pistons for that last question? I would imagine. Once you type in your response, I'll come back to that one. Um, and then for me, the Cleveland thing, the biggest thing for me, like I said before, we have enough data and we have enough, video, so to speak, to know what you're going to get from James Harden in the playoffs. And because of that, that bumps them out. I'm looking at this right here. I like the Knicks' chances. I truly do. I like the Celtics. I like the Pistons. I think those are the top 3 teams in the East right now. And then I'm also going to throw Philly into that pot. And I would say one of those 4 teams gets out of the East. If, Philly can keep Embiid healthy, that's the biggest what if, in the NBA. Might be the biggest what if in sports. You're saying yes, and the Knicks for McBride and OG on the return. Listen, when McBride comes back, and I think the Knicks are probably hopeful to maybe squeeze in a game or two from him uh, prior to the end of the regular season. He'll definitely be ready for the playoffs. This is going to be a deep team, okay? And it's just going to come down to utilizing everybody. I think that's going to be a big thing right there with me for the Knicks. But I look at one of those 4 teams as far as the team that is going to, get out of the East. Of course, the injury factor. With all of these squads, we don't know what's going to happen. You're saying the Cavs are the Cavs. Well, I feel like last year was Cleveland's chance. Things really came together in their first year under Kenny Atkinson, and of course, it didn't work out for them in the postseason. We saw Indiana run circles around them, in the second round of the playoffs, and of course, the Cavs were never able to answer that bell or get back to that level so far this season. You're saying you think that Detroit, they are the 2020, 2023, 2024 Knicks, the Dante DiVincenzo team. They're building something right there. And, I know that they picked up Kevin Herter prior to the trade deadline. I think Kevin Herter helps them. I want to see how the Pistons look on that postseason stage right now. I mean, we've seen them and they were close. They gave the Knicks, their money's worth last year. I think the one thing that hurt the Pistons in that series, in my opinion, was the lack of experience. And I think that's something that you alluded to before. So I want to see how that postseason experience helps the Pistons this time around. I like JB Bickerstaff. I feel like JB Bickerstaff did not get enough credit for the job that he did in Cleveland, and for anybody who wanted to like underestimate what he could do in the regular season, just look at what he's gone out there and done with this Detroit squad right now. So, like I said, I'm looking at Pistons, Celtics, Knicks, or Sixers, in my opinion. One of those four teams is going to be the team that comes out of the East. It's wide open this year. It's not just the East, but I also think it's wide open in the West right now because you look at it, no team, and of course, I'm talking about the Eastern Conference right now, no team has really distinguished themselves, if you will. Like, you know what? This is going to be the dominant team. This is going to be the team that runs away with things. And honestly, I think that's great because I think it's going to make for an intriguing second half. I also think it's going to make for an even more uh, intriguing postseason this year for the playoffs because there's no clear cut favorite, especially in the Eastern Conference. Like I said, there's a lot of what ifs with some of these teams. And I think one of the biggest things for me is going to be the injury factor in the playoffs, as well as who you don't have to play. But nonetheless, you know, the season is going to gear back up in 3 days, Thursday. I think the All Star break is too long now. That's just my 2 cents right there. But nonetheless, I think those four teams that I mentioned, one of those are going, to be the one that gets out of the East. You're saying Bickerstaff is a coaching lifer. I'll give him that. Well, listen, his dad always found a way to get a head coaching gig in the NBA, and of course, he passed it on to his son. And like I said, after things did not work out for him in Cleveland for whatever reason, of course, there had to be some behind the scenes stuff that we all don't know about. But nonetheless, I think he has found a legit home in the Motor City with the Pistons set out there. But nonetheless, the second half gets cranked up in 3 days. Let's see who has what it takes to get out of the East and get to the finals. Hey, Pat, my man, definitely appreciate you chiming in. Definitely appreciate the commentary that you delivered tonight. From some of your comments, I take it that you are a New York Knicks fan. I'll tell you like this, man. Hopefully, you know what, we saw the Knicks fans go crazy last year in getting to the conference finals. Hopefully, for your sake, this spring they give you something to be even happier about as well. You're talking about JB Bickerstaff. You said his dad has been in the NBA since I was young. And I'm 48. Well, I'm almost there with you, man. I don't know if you can see it completely, but I got a little bit of salt coming in with the pepper, but that's a whole nother combo for another day. But definitely, man, appreciate the commentary. If you like this channel, definitely subscribe if you haven't already. And if you have subscribed, definitely be sure to tell a friend and keep me on that wavelength, if you will, for when you're ready to check out some more sports talk, not just NBA, but a lot of other things, NFL, NBA, the MLB. We can go right down the list. Knicks fan since 1991. So you came into vogue almost when Pat Riley uh, took over things for the Knicks at the Garden. And of course, that was one thing that those Knicks, at least in the 90s, could always hang their hat on. Because you mentioned Michael Jordan right there. The Knicks always, always, put the gave the Bulls of that era some serious comp. And I will say this, man, those Knicks games against the Bulls in the '90s were must see TV. Okay, Knicks Pacers to me was probably the best rivalry for the Knicks. And I say that because it went back and forth. Both teams won, but Knicks Bulls definitely was must see TV. But folks, if you like what you heard and saw on this podcast, you know what to do. Just hit that like button as well as subscribing to this channel. And like I always say, it's greatly appreciated. Also, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, check me out anytime at 300 pounds of sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'd be my pleasure to follow you right back. And also, there's a Facebook page at the Sports Depot 365. As far as I'm concerned, one of the better sports groups going on sports on our social media. Real quick before we tune off, I see your last comment there. You're saying, yes, Pat Riley brought me in. I'll always say this about Pat Riley, man. And, of course, we don't see it right now after the pandemic. Not as many coaches in the NBA are wearing the suits. But nonetheless, I mean, there are sharp dressed guys, and then there's Pat Riley. He's always in a category of his own. When I think about Pat Riley, I always think about that Knicks Suns rivalry from the early '90s. Not the Knicks Suns rivalry, the Knicks Suns game where I think it was a fight between Doc Rivers and Kevin Johnson. That's how it started, and Pat Riley ripped the pant leg off his suit during that. That was just before the end of the first half, and then he came out in the second half with a brand new Armani suit. Pat Riley's as smooth as they come. Man. That's my final thoughts on him. But yeah, folks, that's gonna wrap it up. And like I always say, thanks for chiming in. And oh, we got another Knicks fan chiming in there. What's going on? Love the McDonald's symbol. Haven't eaten there in years, but you know what? I'll say this like this. Those those Big Macs and fries helped me through a lot of nights in high school and college. Yeah, man, definitely, man. But until next time, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I'm signing off and I'm saying thanks once again for checking out the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.